little actions for me there. I'm a little bit later tonight because my husband told me something stunning twice before I came live. This is a mental health live. Everyone is welcome. It does not matter what area of the spectrum you are on versus your views, etc. Everyone is welcome here. It's all about mental health. But I have to start this session by telling you what literally, think about what kind of a mindset I need to be in for when I come on here. It's been, a relatively long day, and it's really important that I make sense. You guys really matter. So it's kind of important that I just sit and be just for like 10 minutes. And just before we go live, my husband, I kid you not, says, do you know the Ark of the Covenant? Now, we all know the Ark of the Covenant. We've all watched the movie Indiana Jones. Then he says, well, it's in a place in Ethiopia. It's guarded by monks, and they go blind and die after a few years of guarding it. Instantly, I had a million questions. Like, number one, I'm not sure the Ark of the Covenant is a good thing if you go blind and die after a few years. I think that may be something that we should avoid guarding and maybe sink to the bottom of the sea somewhere. Just like, this is a dangerous, evil vessel. Let us throw it overboard. So he did that. And then as if like by magic, he just came out with, by the way, as well, people loved the Patreon stuff that was uploaded with the outtakes. And you guys all know me by now. I'm very open. I'm very sarcastic. So I went, yeah, sure, that'll be funny. And he shouted down, really? And I was like, yeah. Meaning no. Like, every woman knows that nobody wants outtakes of her looking really stupid and pulling really bad faces. And I am like a contortionist with my face. Genuinely am. It's incredible. I can look like a cartoon character. I'm not going to do it here. I can get my fist in my mouth. There are lots of things that I can do. But the point is, just before I came on a mental health live where I'm about soothing and zen, I now have these trajectories of divergence regarding whether somebody needs to go to Ethiopia and immediately save those monks, or whether I need to jump on immediately and remove that thing from Patreon. And I don't care what anybody's saying, Peter.
I didn't say it's 100% true. So
what's the 100% true? The monks and the Ethiopian. Somebody needs to go and save them. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying that when I think about God, I think about like love and peace and forgiveness and kindness. I'm like all about the New Testament where we like dance with prostitutes and drink. That's what Jesus was all about. I'm less about the God of Hail and Almighty. I like peace and love. You know what I mean? Also, apologies for the very deep voice. We all know that I have quite a deep, very Manchester accent, but right now it's incredibly deep because I went to my nephew's wedding and I had to shout all night because I've not socialised for a long time. And at weddings, they seem to believe that it's important that they play the music, which is always Gloria Gaynor and said like tunes, so high decibel wise that people's heads literally explode around a third into the night. So I've had to shout hello to a lot of people. I digress. We have been to Ethiopia, we have been to ridiculous outtakes, and now we're me at a wedding with my low voice. Hi everyone, it's lovely to see you. That's my bit for the evening. Now I've got that out of the way, we can all move on. It's still going to be going through all your heads right now though, isn't it? What's happening to those Ethiopian monks and what can we do about it? Maybe we need to do a crowdfunder, I don't know. What can I do with my son? He's 25. I remember this. This was one that I was meant to answer last time and I got really rudely cut out. So many apologies. There must be nothing worse than me coming to a question, all of our kit just dying on us and it disappearing. So he's 25, he works, he has no life, no stable girlfriend or relationship. He's withdrawn, smokes cannabis daily, he doesn't speak to me at all. He seems jealous of his sisters. He says I do nothing for him, yet he lives with me and I look after him like he's still 10. I pay for everything, cook, do washing, pay his phone bill. He works, so he has his own money, but that's it. He's so hateful when he does speak to me. He says I don't care about him, I can't talk to him, and he goes off the deep end all the time, so I don't bother trying. My way of showing I care is being mum. That's all I'm good at, or not. Help, please. So first of all, you can't just define yourself as mum. I think that women are brought up with this bias about what we are meant to be when we deliver a child from our womb, or we are given a child through adoption, or we foster and so on and so forth, or we become a step parent. Like immediately we're meant to know that our personality and our individuality has to be secondary to being maternal, and it's not true, and we get lost. So there's a bit of advice for you here, which is you need to find yourself again. You can't see yourself in the eyes and reflection of your teenager or your young person or your adult young person, because they're not going to reflect you fairly, are they? The person that you meet at work, or the person that's a friend, or the person that you go to a bar and chat with, they're going to be reflecting who they meet. Your kid is going to be reflecting how they feel in the moment about you, knowing that you're a loving parent and you're not going to throw them out, probably, least likely, and that you're definitely going to still feed them. So the parameters of their behaviour often exhibits a nastiness and a negativity. They know they can get away with it. Secondly, when I read that, I was like, I would like to be your son, because your son gets away with it. You love your child, you love your children, but you would not accept this kind of a relationship in a friend. You wouldn't accept this kind of a relationship probably in a sibling. I certainly wouldn't. I'm sure you wouldn't. You'd be like, they're treating me really badly. I need to respond and react to this appropriately. What's happened is he has learned that you are his punch bag, and you are his money bag, and you are his food bag, and you are his cleaning bag, and you are all of those bags in one place. And when he tells you those nasty things, you accept it because you think, well, I have to love him more and deeper and harder, because at the end of the day, I am his mum and he has all these struggles that you see. But he's making choices. Now, I am all about compassionate parenting, so I'm not going to run in here now and be like, throw him out on the street tonight. I don't believe in that. I believe that children certainly thrive through love. At 25, even though you probably think he should be doing more things with his life than he's doing, at least he's got a stable job, and that means that he can be responsible, and that's annoying. Because if you think about what that means, it means that he's choosing where to dump his crap. If he goes to work and does it, he's going to get sacked, or he's going to get a warning, or he's going to get made, redundant in the long term. So he has a reasoning to act accordingly to rules and regulations when he's paid. He doesn't respect the same territory at home because there are none of those rules and regulations. So it's not about tough love, because I really despise it when parents throw their kids out. I do. Other people disagree with me. Your views are welcome here. But I don't believe in that. But I think you need boundaried love. And I think that comes down to him starting to pay rent, him starting to be aware that if he speaks to you disrespectfully, there will be consequences. And those consequences will be that you don't do anything for him. That he can live in your home as long as he's paying a certain amount of money, but that you won't accept the way that he treats you, and you'll actually call him out. I don't mean in a conflictual, aggressive way. That never works. I mean in a very calm manner. So if I have to have strong words with my children, they're words. They're not shouts and screams. They are very much, this is how I feel, and this is the impact of your behaviour on the way I feel. And it seems to be far more efficient than, I think, conflictual arguments that just escalate. But you have to ask yourself, would I allow myself to be treated elsewhere? And he is going to have a girlfriend at some point, or a boyfriend at some point. Are you going to want him to treat them the same? You have to be his role model. And I'm not blaming you. You sound like an amazing mother, but you've just gone too far with thinking it's all about your responsibility and nothing to do with his. He's not a child anymore. He needs to be able to see that, and you need to help him grow up, because otherwise he's going to carry these kind of behaviours potentially into relationships, which means he loses in the end. Now, finally, everyone has different views on cannabis. Whatever your views are, that is perfectly acceptable. I will tell you that the problem with recreational and regular use of cannabis, while some people think it's perfectly all right and it works for them, and I completely get it, and yes, there are lots of brilliant things out there about cannabis and pain relief, I'm completely understanding and aware of that, but it can also make somebody into what I call the tomorrow person. So they're stoned when they get home from work, and they'll do it tomorrow. They're stoned when they get home from work, and they'll do it tomorrow. It's not that they're going to develop psychosis or they're going to have massive depression. It's not that I'm saying any of that, I'm saying that it just kind of says to them, I'll do it tomorrow. And then they grow in panic and resentment because they know that they're letting their life just kind of filter away, and they've got these dreams and visions that they didn't achieve, and they're thinking to themselves, I've left it too late, and they're worried, sick inside, and it comes out as aggression and hostility. And actually, probably your son is struggling with that. So I would almost want to get sat side by side, or get him in a car and go for a drive, or go for a walk with him, and just be like, cards on table. You getting stoned all the time, whether you like it or otherwise. I realize that it's limiting you in certain areas. And I want you to think about what your dreams were, are, could be. You would be amazed at the 25-year-olds out there who genuinely think that their life isn't going to be as it should be because they've left it too late. I mean, when you're my age, you're like, I knew nothing. I needed somebody to come and tell me at 25 that like everything was possible. But so many of us have been taught this myth that you have to have a certain amount at a certain point in life. So I think that he probably needs some reassurance as well that whatever it is that he's fearing he's lost is all to play for still. And when you approach it that way, as opposed to it being conflictual and rubbing against each other attitude-wise, you're doing the opposite. You're kind of like, I get this. I'm an elder on this journey. Like, look at how great I am at keeping a home and cooking your meals and bringing in the money. Like, that's what I say to my children all the time. You know, when they struggle to take advice from me, I'm like, okay, let's just look at what I do and what I achieve and what you need and how I provide. And then you tell me that my advice doesn't make sense. Also, the doctors have told you that he's depressed, potentially, but that they can't help until he stops smoking cannabis. I don't know whether you need to have a conversation with another GP. You know, very often we see the same family GP for a long time. It might be worth having a conversation. I would imagine what they're saying is that if you're taking an SSRI, like an antidepressant, for example, though obviously I'm not a psychiatrist and I can't prescribe or be expert on that, I would imagine what they're saying is that he needs to kind of have a clear mind to know about the impact and also that there isn't any interaction between the SSRI, the antidepressants and the cannabis. Also, I think that it's very clear that some people believe, like for example in California, it can be prescribed for depression. So there are mixed kind of belief systems which are kind of unhelpful. But what I say about in the UK is that the stuff that they get on the street, so skunk, is 800 times more potent than when I was a kid and it was like grass. So it's much higher levels of THC, which can cause things like paranoia, and it definitely contributes to lower mood. But again, think about it in this way. He goes to work, he gets home, it's Groundhog Day. It's Groundhog Day. I like that show him he's everything to live for, he just doesn't live it. Listen, it's not that he isn't listening, okay? It's that he isn't doing. You see, that idea that the advice that you're given isn't going in, it will be. It's just at the level that he's communicating right now, he's getting angry. Like he knows everything that you'll be saying to him, he knows. Think back to when you're 25. And this is for all of us when we've got kids and young people and we're trying to help our younger generation. And I think that anybody who's like double their age, it's our duty to educate, not just our own children, but also the way that we interact with our young people in society, because we've been there. And it's really hard work. You have these expectations of yourself and people give you advice and you know it. You really know it. But you don't know what to do about it and you don't know how to transmute that knowledge into understanding and action. That's the issue. You're not doing anything wrong aside from not allowing him to find his responsibility and also being able to say, that's not acceptable behaviour towards me. You're afraid that that's going to add to his depression and it might cause some deeper issues or that he might take some drastic action. But remember, if he can go to work and get through the day and get paid for it, if he can go and score his weed, if he can carry out these responsibilities very, very accurately and very, very appropriately, and he can do it, why can't you do the other stuff? That's because he doesn't have to. And that's it. So he's choosing to be in that situation, and all you can do is assist him in that by offering the care and support that you give him, but with some boundaries. And it's hard. But just remember what it was like to be 25. He's probably petrified of what he's left behind. You know, I'm 25, I should have been doing A, B, C, D, I don't like the job that I'm in, and so on and so forth. And remember, it's been nearly 2 years of a really difficult time. So it's not judging him at this moment in time as it might be in 2 years. Obviously, I'm going to say things like if you can get him to exercise, if you can get him out of his room, if you can get him to do things with you. As far as his sibling rivalry with his sisters, yeah, if they're doing better than him, if they don't argue with you, if they seemingly just flit through life in a way where there isn't that kind of conflict, he's again projecting that. It's not that he doesn't like them or you, it's that he really doesn't like him. And you become a projection of him. Why are you so kind to me when all I do is this? Why are you so nice to me when all I do is that? It's like a reference of self-esteem, and he's got probable low self-esteem. When it comes down to therapy and things like that, it could be worth investing in some in therapy. I don't know whether you can afford that. I do appreciate that when I flippantly say words like, well, you could just have some therapy. You know, one, there could be a 2-year waiting list with a GP. Secondly, a lot of therapists charge a reasonable amount of money. You know, it's not cheap. They're spending their time and their expertise working with you. But if you could look at maybe getting a private therapist to just kind of talk to him, maybe through psychotherapy, again, some will be like, well, if you're smoking cannabis all the time, that's not going to be a relationship we can deal with. But there'll be some who are experts in that area and they'll be used to that. And like I said, it's more about him starting to stop the self-loathing and the self-esteem to build, and it's about how you can create those foundations with him, not for him. I know I can't answer it in a more succinct way than that, and I know it's a bigger issue than that. But like I said, just go back to being 25 and the overwhelming feeling of what you were meant to be. Like, genuinely, I thought by 25, you meant to own a house, be married, probably have a child on the way, have a pension. None of that worked out, by the way, because that was somebody else's blueprint that I was living. And I really needed an elder to come down and tell me that information. I needed an elder to say, hey, that doesn't work. Like, that's why so many people are failing in relationships. That's why so many people are failing in their dreams. That's why so many people aren't progressing in the way that they should, because somebody's told them and sold them a whole blueprint theory of what their life's meant to be, and it isn't, and they're matching themselves to something and somebody that doesn't really exist. And I think we do that fundamentally again and again in our society. I hope that I've given you some food for thought anyway. Hi Emma, my husband left me 8 years ago. Oh, I was doing this on this morning. I was doing relationships on the phone in. One woman had not been in a relationship fully for 40 years after her original partner had left. And I was just like, I just wanted to find her. I wanted to get her on a dating app, and I wanted to get her connected, because, you know, people who are loving hold on to those things, and they're the perfect partners for other people. I digress. My husband left me 8 years ago, and I still don't remember having a clear answer as to why he left. He said he didn't know what he wanted, left his job, filed for divorce nearly 2 years later, and moved 130 miles away. Do I ask him why, as I still don't feel I can move on after all this time? The thing about asking the question is being prepared not to get the answer you want. That's the rule. But if you can be prepared to get the answer that you don't want and accept that, and you feel that could give you closure, then it's worth asking. Equally, it can be really hard when you ask the question and they're like, I don't really know. Just wasn't working. Because we expect that this is epiphany, this watershed moment, this absolute knowledge that this woman or this man is wrong for me, and this is the reason why. And that's when you think about relationships. Very often that's not how we feel, is it? They kind of ebb. You know, one day you notice that those quirks that used to be really fun, you just want to attack them when they do them because they've started to grate on you, or the way that they eat their food, or the way that they talk in front of your friends. And there are all these kind of tiny fragments of moments that collide and collude. And then suddenly you feel like that person isn't quite who you want it to be. And that kind of transpires to carry on over a period of time. And so by the time we make that pivotal decision, this isn't working, there could have been a million reasons why. And they could have been really tiny and incremental. Because that's the other thing. If we kind of say to our partner, well, when you left me, why did you leave me? And they say, I found you unattractive. That's a really honest answer, isn't it? But are you prepared for that kind of feeling? Because that happens in life. That happens to people. It's not that you're not attractive. It's that they stop finding you attractive. You weren't successful, sexually fulfilling, you know, you didn't act in a way in accordance to their view of what a woman should be, you know, all of these things. But it's like, are you prepared for that? Because I think that's separate to moving on. If you're saying that this guy that left you and moved 130 miles away never gave you closure, so you have chosen to literally remain open to him, which you just sound a little bit like that, or you've decided that until he gives it you, you're not safe to move into another relationship because, hey, somebody else might see the same flaws that he saw, then again, he's got power over you. And yet it's a power, one, he doesn't want. And secondly, that really you don't need, because as a person in a relationship, you can't be perfect for anybody and everybody. You know, it's just the way it goes. There will be somebody out there who looks at your idiosyncrasies and quirks and all the things that you feel are wrong, and they will find them beautiful. And then on bad days, they will find you annoying. And that will be the way your life goes until hopefully you die in that relationship because you have survived. It's not about anything else. So you need to take that power back and be like, okay, his perception of me does not define the perception I have of myself in relationships. His leaving me might have been the fact that he couldn't make it work. Why do I have to own all of that? And I'm going to instead think about, what do I want in a partner? What didn't he give me? Because there will be loads. So I always say to my husband now, if I'm really honest, if my ex hadn't had a relationship with somebody else during our marriage, would I still be there? Probably. Would I have been satisfied? No. But it wasn't bad enough to leave, and really it wasn't good enough to thrive. But because you're so wound up in what you're meant to do, be, have, what your kids are meant to grow up in, you have all these paradigms in your brain about the judgments that you give yourself. And actually letting go is the most powerful experience that you can give yourself. But it comes at a cost, which is to realize that other people will not like you at times. A lot of people don't like me. You'll know that. If you don't know that, just do a quick Google. There's a lot of people out there who I would even border on hate me. They don't know me. I'm sure that we get on fine in life, but they see me in a binary way. You know, this is me and that's it. There's no grey area. That's okay because you guys love me. So I will take the love and I will accept the hate, right? And you need to take the fact that you have all these things about you that other people are going to find wonderful and alluring and sexy and fabulous. And you're going to put all your energy into that. And the ones like him who didn't want you in the way that you deserve to be wanted, well, he's done you a real favour. Because every single day that he's in your life is a day lost. Right now it's about accepting that it's time to move on and closing that door on his opinion and perception of you. But if you want to have that conversation with him, it might be really meh, but you'll be like, okay. Not even he knew. Or it might be, you annoyed the hell out of me. And you'll be like, that's okay. Because somebody else is going to see all those annoying things that you saw and think they are brilliant. You know? Simple as that. Hi, I hope my message reaches you. I've seen you on this morning, wanted to reach out. I met a fella in 2000, I like that, 2018. At the time, we had a girlfriend, but we liked each other. A couple of months later, they broke up. We started talking, met up. I wasn't feeling it. Still wasn't over my ex. Lost contact, then came back into contact 7 months ago. Have been meeting up, talking every day. I decided last night to ask where we stand, as I really like him. However, he just read my message and didn't reply. How should I deal with this? I feel that. I think everybody listening feels that, don't they? Because what a lot of us do is we're like, I have just made myself entirely vulnerable. You know, first of all, we got into a bit of a relationship when we shouldn't really have, you know, feelings were growing when ideally they shouldn't have because he was in a relationship. But then we kind of did start to communicate after we broke up with that relationship that he was having, and you just kind of weren't in the space because you acknowledged that your ex and you had broken up and it wasn't in that place for you right then. But for whatever reason, universe collides and you're back into contact and you're enjoying it and you're building those feelings. And remember as well, just to say out there, women more than men. Women have this really powerful oxytocin rush a lot of the time where we believe because we're with somebody and, you know, particularly if we're sexually intimate, that we're meant to stay. It's like a little prod from our old primordial selves of the fertility issues and all of those things. It's like trying to connect you. So you can almost like kind of start a relationship not being that into that person, and then you find yourself 6,000 months down the road really liking them and you didn't even know how that happened when your opinions changed so much. So remember that part of this is chemical as well. But you've got to a point where you thought, okay, I think I'm ready to be the girlfriend. You told him, and he's just not got back to you, but he's read it. Now, the instant Western mentality is to go, I have been rejected and abandoned. He does not fancy me. He doesn't want to be with me. I've made a fool of myself, right? That's the Western-centric model. And part of that is because women have been told that for a long time. You know, you shouldn't be the one to make the first move. And what I want to say is, like, I am so proud that you did that. I'm proud of your vulnerability. I'm proud of your courage. I'm proud of you not waiting to be asked. They are powerful things to know about yourself. Even if this guy does not come back to you in the way that you want him to, it doesn't matter. What you did there was you learned a key important lesson in life. And I mean it, God, if everybody could just learn this key, it's don't wait to be invited. It's honestly express yourself and accept if it doesn't work out, because you are going to do that and you're going to cope. And then the next time you're going to do that and you might get rejected again and you're going to cope. And then finally, because you've taken those risks and you've built that courage and you've become resilient with it, you're going to do it and you're going to get a yes and it's going to be amazing. But it's all coming from that belief that you have a right to ask. Now, it could be that you have a really deep thinking guy. He's thinking to himself, I don't know how to answer that. Like, do I want a relationship with her properly? Is this something that I'm willing to do? And he's thinking about it. So, I would give him a little bit more time. Honestly, that would be my first premise. I would give him a little bit more time because you've put it out there. He's heard that. He's read it. He's not responded. You don't need to push that any further. You've been brave and you've been courageous, and you should not feel ashamed or apologise for putting yourself on the line that way. Everybody should do it. That's the right way to handle love. That's why you get the best in the end. It's why you don't settle, because you're not willing to. You'll always put yourself out there for the person that you find attractive, the person that you want to be with. That's a great thing. But basically, you've just got to wait. And I'll be dead honest with you. If he didn't get back in touch with you, oh, wow, you have dodged a bullet. I know that might be painful to hear, but you have dodged a bullet. If you can be vulnerable and honest and open and empathic and compassionate to another human being and they just stonewall you, then they are not the kind of person you need to waste your intimacy or time or care or consideration or compassion on at all. If he gets back to you and I kind of want to stay as we are, and that involves sex and intimacy, you have to think then, do I want that? Is that enough for me? Because there are a lot of people who play the B game when they want the A game. And it's not okay to settle, particularly if it involves sex and intimacy. So again, if he gets back and he's like, I'm not sure, then you need to really think, well, do I want to get any more invested in this where I know where my head's going, I know where my heart's going, or do I want to protect myself from that and think about putting my energy and care somewhere else where it will be reciprocated and I'll be loved? So you need to answer that question. If that occurs, it might be he gets back to you and he's like, hell yeah, that's great. Let's do this. And you may find in that moment that you go, I'm not actually that sure anymore, because this happens as well. All of these outcomes are okay, because the most important one is that you'll get your answer. Your answer will either be a yes, my God, I've dodged a bullet because that guy was so ignorant, or, well, this is the way I see our relationship. Are you willing to accept it? So just have a bit of patience. There's a saying that says the gift of patience is patience. I understand it more these days, but my husband will tell you I'm an incredibly impatient person. So when I say like the gift of patience is patience, it is an art I am perfecting. I have not quite reached the zen of patience yet. I'm like, I am really patient. Is it here yet? I am really patient. Are they there? That's the way I go. If I order something now, I am of the Amazon generation, aren't I? You get used to just being like, and then like there's a guy at your door handing it to you. That's just the way that modern life is. So like when I order something off Etsy and it says 6 weeks, I feel like I've entered a other universe. It's like 6 weeks? What is this madness? You know what I'm saying? Patience. Also, just think I'll acknowledge that a few messages that aren't being asked on here, but that I've read and that I really made a conscious connection with, where some of you are feeling really, really scared at the moment. You are telling me that you are starting to feel really suffocated, really trapped, really afraid, and you feel in your own minds that there are things going on that you're not happy with in the world around you. And my job is not to have the answers to those questions. Of course it isn't. No, I'm just me. I just like concentrate on my world being small. And that's my advice. My advice is, firstly, chaos creates the biggest growth. There is always balance in the end. Like the universe has her way of making that happen. So even when there feels like there's just no rhyme nor reason, no, everything's anxiety provoking, things just don't seem to be in order, they're finding that order. That's always been the way. So when you're finding things chaotic or uncertain or anxiety provoking, it's all about finding the opposite. So balance and soothing and calm. And it's just trusting in that and trying not to get carried away with the fears. Like fear is one of the biggest limiters, but it's also one of the biggest problems when it comes down to health. Like fear is terrible for cortisol and adrenaline production, which is great if you're running away from a saber-toothed tiger, but I don't think any of us have done that today. Let me know if you have. But what it really is about is acknowledging that it limits us. Fear keeps you in a box. And there are lots of reasons why people feel that staying in that box is safer than being out of the box. Because being out of a box and being fearless means that you'll get rejected. It means you'll get abandoned. It means that you might get hated at times. All of these things come with it, but it means that you'll be authentic, and it means that you'll be cared for by the people who really, really connect with you, and you'll be authentically yourself. So what I'm saying is just try to be authentically yourself, but keep your world small, surrounded by people that actually connect with you, agree with you, make you feel safe in that way, but also be fearless about your perspective and perceptions. Like, it is all right for people to have different ones. I think we all need a lesson in that at the moment, don't we? It's really funny because as a human being, I have friendships and relationships with people who I vehemently disagree with on so many things, politics, health, so many things, but I really like them. I can see beyond those differences and I can connect with all the similarities. That's what makes life a rich tapestry, isn't it? That's what makes human beings learn. Because I have this view, you have that view, I disagree with you massively, but you're going to educate me about why you disagree with me massively, and now I can understand that perspective. It doesn't mean I'm going to shift mine, and it doesn't mean you're going to shift yours, but it means that I'm going to connect, I'm going to understand, and that's really important for us as human beings. Hey Emma, I suffer from OCD, and over the past few days the compulsions have been so bad that I can't concentrate on anything else. I'm having a really bad time. Have you got any advice of how I can occupy my mind so I don't act on my compulsions? Thanks. Okay, so first off, OCD UK is just like biggest wealth of research and lots of tools and lots of things that you can use and learn about. So I would look on OCD UK, but I don't know what kind of position you are in when it comes down to things like private therapy. I really like ERP therapy, so you can look that up. It's ERP, and basically it's all about going through the motions of what exactly you're doing at the moment in time and just accepting that these thoughts and compulsions are there, but just still being regimented in the day-to-day activities that you'd ordinarily do. Now, some people do this by just being like really clear about their activities. So the times that they go to work, the times they go to the gym, the times that they cook food. So there's almost this rigidity and safety, so that it means that even though those compulsions are saying do this, do that, do the other, you acknowledge that they're there. You accept that they're there. You don't try and argue with them. You just try to accept the feelings and know that they're not very nice, but also recognize that they're not going to have the power for you to change your behavior to accommodate them. And ERP is really good at doing that. And it can be really frustrating when somebody says to you with OCD, if you keep practicing going through the motions every single day of doing what you're meant to do, not what your compulsions are telling you, of the life that you lived before, it will in the end dissipate. That's not how it feels when you're living it. You know, you have this impatience. You're like, my God, this is just getting worse. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. And remember, the more you believe that, the more stress you're going to feel. The more stress you're going to feel, the more anxiety you're going to feel. We know that OCD is on the anxiety spectrum, and therefore we're going to increase those behaviors. So we need as much soothing as possible. Now, I don't know whether you've gone to your doctor, but if you haven't seen your GP and you haven't seen a psychiatrist or a psychologist and you haven't got that help, it could be really good to get a referral. But also, your GP might talk to you about some potential medical treatments. You might not want that, and that's fine. But if you don't want that, it can be really helpful to do things like meditation, deep breathing, things that ground you as well. So you know how I am, guys, about grounding. Go outside, find yourself like a beautiful pebble. Find one of those pebbles that those kids paint. Is it just me? You're meant to leave them other places. I'm like, I have found a pebble. I will keep the pebble. I have a few pebbles. One's on my doorstep. If somebody takes it, that's fine, but it's on my doorstep, I feel like people shouldn't take it. But, you know, get something that grounds you, carry it around with you, and remember that in moments where you're just kind of going through these feelings, compulsions, just ground yourself. So that can be picking out the stone from your pocket and just going, 5 things that I can feel, 4 things that I can see, 3 things that I can hear, 2 things that I can touch, 1 thing that I can taste. Just like allow yourself to kind of connect with that. Also, I'm a big believer in aromatherapy. I was having a conversation with peer I absolutely respect. She's a clinical psychologist who I love dearly, and she's fabulous at what she does. And I was talking about the fact that I like to use peppermint, and she was like, you need to let your clients choose the aromatherapy smell that they go for. And I was like, I'm going to say that now because I've learned from her that that is probably something I should say as a preface. It's not about what I think is the right smell for you. I tend to use peppermint to ground me because it's a really strong smell, and albus oil because my grandma used to give it me when I had a really snotty nose, because my nose has been broken about 9 times. Don't ask. Had a lot of accidents, played a lot of sport. That's why it looks a bit dodgy. But the consequence of that is that, there are a few smells that can really get up my nose. So albus oil is one that can feel, and it helps to ground me. So if you carry something around like in a tissue, and when you're having those like thoughts going away, just like bring yourself back to the grounding experience, breathe deeply, breathe in the smell. Any smell is okay. You might want tangerine, you might want lavender, might something completely different. I don't know, it might be a smell of somebody that you love. So like when I was a teenager, it would be Poison, the perfume, because that would be my mum, or my dad's Chanel Blue, because that's what I bought him in the latter years before he died. So there are things that kind of ground me. So look at exploring those. But the big thing is, don't let OCD interrupt any of your normal daily patterns, and you just keep working through it. And it's so frustrating, but it works. And if you could afford a little bit of ERP or other therapy, there are lots of different therapies, then explore that. It is difficult when times are hard. And I often talk to people about private therapy, and you are talking, the cheapest is probably going to be about £50. The most expensive will be £300. So there is a massive spectrum, and probably more. I've seen people charge a lot more than that. I would say, 70, 80 is pretty much the average. And so it's an outlay, it is. However, if those sessions are transformative for you, it's an investment. It's a bit like we go on holiday and we pay for flights, and not that we have done for a few years, but you know where I'm going with this. Or we'll save up for a new dress. And sometimes we have to remember that the internal is more important than the external. Like, if there's one bit of advice, it's that you can get everything that you want from a charity shop. You really can. Like, I am living witness to the fact that you don't need to spend a lot of money on clothes. You might all be like, yeah, we do know that, Emma. We have been meaning to have that conversation with you. I look quite smart today because I did this morning, but if you watch my YouTube channel, it's usually just hair up, screw up back, jeans, t-shirt, usually rock. So at the end of the day, you can invest in certain areas. And I think therapy, when you get the right person, it's a real investment, and it doesn't have to take years. It can take weeks. It's enough to give you the information that you require and you need to work through that. So things like ERP, it's not about you going and going and going. It's about you being equipped with certain strategies and tools and then going and doing it yourself. Same with CBT a lot of the time, Like I said, CBT is another great treatment, but you can get that on the NHS, definitely. It will take quite a while for you to get it, but if you can afford it and you find the right person, then again, with some homework and tools, you'll feel so much more able to cope. And I think that the world would be a lovelier place if we could all not have to pay for therapy, and that we all had people in our life that we could talk to about our feelings, but it's not always possible. But finally, I'll leave you with that. If there is somebody in your life who you can have those conversations with, they don't need to be trained. You can just have conversations with people that care for you and that you care for, and just allow yourself to exhale those feelings, to just talk it through, be open about it, be unapologetic about it. You're just human. We're all a little bit of a mess. That's what makes us beautiful. Like, every single one of us is broken in certain directions, but we glue ourselves back together and we create a beautiful mosaic, and that's the way that our bodies and our minds are. But every single person is impacted to some degree, and know that it's okay. Hi Emma, I've just been away to my son's and had a good time, but struggled as I'm so travel anxious. It impacts the time away. I feel as though I don't want to go anywhere anymore. I'm more relaxed at home. Well, number one, after the past 18 months being traumatized on a daily basis by the news and by death figures and by fear and by all the things that go with it, if you have any kind of anxiety, that is going to have increased. And it would be really strange if it hadn't increased. And I think you have to normalize it a little bit. So instead of saying to yourself, what is wrong with me? Why am I not able to do this? It's more like, oh, this makes sense. I have anxiety, particularly if you've got GAD, for example. I have anxiety. It's been a really anxiety-provoking place and space. I've been told the safest place in the world is my home. Therefore, I've had that reinforced again and again and again and again. And now I'm at a point where leaving the home and going elsewhere is really starting to impact on my mental health, because I've bought into that bias, and that is completely okay. But now you have to start extricating yourself to that. And the only way forward is exposure work, and you're doing it already. And one of the things that you get when you have phobics, and everybody works differently with phobia, by the way, this is the way that I tend to work. So I can only tell you from my practitioner stance how I work. But exposure therapy is what I do. So if you've got a fear of ketchup, I'm going to get you painting with ketchup. It's as simple as that. I get you very at ease. My husband will tell you, he was scared of spiders. He had to hold a tarantula. It was as simple as that. He got over his fear of spiders. He thinks they're really sweet now. He can pick them up and put them out. There's no issue. They would never be killed. We're devastated if the cat kills a spider. Like, spiders are amazing things. Unless they were human size, and then I agree, we'd probably be having a different conversation. But it's knowing that your phobia, as in going places, the only way you can really break through it is to go places and more and more. Like, it's great that you've had the reinforcement of being with your son, but the anticipation and anxiety of knowing that you're going to have to travel back kind of interfered with it. You've got to do it more. You've got to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And unfortunately, there isn't an easier way through it. Meditation can help. As I said before, anchoring, talking about it, having therapy, all of those things matter. For example, think about life per se. When you go out, and this is before COVID, so let's just backtrack and just go back to life pre-pandemic when everybody was just getting about the business. Life wounds you. Now, it grows you and it creates a more compassionate you, sometimes more bitter, but if we use it correctly, it will grow us in a good way. We get wounded by relationships, by redundancies, by not achieving certain things that we want to achieve. You know, there are all these wounds, and the world outside can sometimes feel like a really unsafe place. And unless we test ourselves by growing fear, because remember, when you feel afraid, you're being taught courage. When you went to travel to your son's place, you weren't being taught fear in that moment. You were being taught bravery. You were doing it and working it in spite of how it was making you feel. That is your powerful tool. And you've got used to feeling safe because the world can be a wounding place, and it's felt very wounding in the past 2 years. So just acknowledge it. Like I said, work hard at things like meditation, anchoring, all those things. But the big thing is start scaring yourself. I mean that, start scaring yourself. Climb a mountain, throw yourself out of a plane like I did. Do something that you are really, really sure would terrify you. Build up to it by allowing yourself to believe that once you have achieved it, it will remind you every single time that you are the person who can see something fundamentally terrifying and overcome it. And the more that you can build those little opportunities to just overcome fear, the better. You know, I remember thinking to myself, it's very small compared to being afraid of going outside, etc. Well, when my best friend died, I remember realizing I had no best friend. I had no friends, really. I just had my family, which is amazing, before Dad died. But, you know, I had this setup of close family, that was it. And I didn't have friends. And I realized that I hadn't had a network of friends for a long time. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm really scared of not meeting people and getting on with people. I don't understand how I'm going to do that. And then just making a conscious decision, I'm just going to start asking people for a coffee. I'm just going to be like the person in the green room who's like, I really like you, can we go for coffee? And, you know, maybe 1 out of 8 ended up with me sat opposite them. But, you know, some of those became, you know, incredibly close friends. And in the past 18 months, a lot of that has happened as well, where I've just made and taken risks. And you don't win every time, but when you do, it's worth it. So you are already working that plan. And the advice that I can give you is the advice that you're mirroring yourself. Just keep doing it. And like I said, when you feel that pang of pain and fear, it's teaching you courage and soothing. I promise you. Hi, Emma, you're somebody that has always had that easygoing nature, but intelligent enough to be understanding. I've never messaged anyone before, but I'm just getting tired of being the person I am. So my husband's like this behind, what? What's this? Emma has an easygoing nature. What is this? I am not who I was at 25. Neither are most people. Like, I have been a whole shade of different subset personalities, all reaching into this moment now. Some of who were dicks, some of whom made really bad mistakes, some of who did really stupid things, right? Like, I am not the person I was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So the thing that you see and who I am and how I've arrived here are very different. And I have all the same traits as everybody else, honestly. So when you say you just don't know whether you can be bothered being here kind of thing, right? That's more, I'm not getting what I want from my life. I don't feel like I'm embracing what I'm really meant to be embracing. That's not a place of being static. And it can feel really fundamentally challenging because it feels trapped. That's the way you feel. You're like, I'm in this little box and I can't get out. And it's a mindset, but it feels very, very powerful. And we all go there. I go there. Everyone I know goes there. And it's a moment of transition. The big thing I've learned about the most trapped I feel, the most scared I feel, all of those things, it's always the bit that's teaching me the most because you're uncomfortable. You don't like it. You didn't realize, but you were in that box for a while and you liked it. Yeah? Because this has been a new feeling. You don't know whether you can be bothered. So you have been okay in that box and now you're not. That's not a bad thing. You're moving boxes. Ideally, you're shifting boxes entirely and you're going to be free. But you can't do that without that feeling of, I don't like it here. I don't like what I'm doing. I don't like what I'm feeling. I don't like what I'm experiencing. That's the key. So now it's about finding the lock. And the thing about that, well, what should I do? I should just cease to exist. Everybody who comes here knows I have a massive bias. I have a huge faith. I believe deeply in God and the big, beautiful beyond and life and consciousness continuing. That's my bias. I have to say that because my advice will come from a place of bias at certain points. If we were in therapy, unless we were doing something spiritual, I would not be disclosing that if you were a client, because obviously my job is to just be kind of quite neutral. But on this question, it's important because it's existential. It's a sense of, well, if I just cease to exist, then I won't have to worry about all these things. My issue there is like, one, you have no evidence to say that happens. So is that actually resolving the issue? And secondly, like, you have got so many other options. And that doesn't underplay, as you know, guys, it doesn't underplay why people kill themselves. I appreciate that. I've been there. I've lived it. But think about, instead of seeing that like wall and door that's just locked in front of you, just turning around and seeing a window and it's open. And all you need to do is turn around and shift your paradigm and climb out of the window and start something new. You might, in a year's time, be doing something completely different to what you ever believed. You've got to kill the life, not the self. Kill the life, not the self, right? You know, the life you're living is the problem. The way it feels uncomfortable is the solution, because it's giving you the stepping stones of change. And it can feel really overwhelming and you just want somebody to come and adult you. We all do that, don't we, guys? We're all like looking for the adult in the room and then we're like, oh God, we're the adult. And suddenly you're the one who has to make those choices for yourself. You're the one who has to come to those decisions, and it's scary, but it's liberating. So you need to get strategic, sit down, figure a way forward. What is it that you really want? What were those dreams that you might not have discovered? What were those dreams that you might have put away? Don't. Like, they're there to serve you. So often in the Western-centric model, we have this idea about how we're meant to live, and it's completely at odds to how we feel inside. So what is it that you wanted? Like, ask yourself that question. What would make my life better? Now, I've often said on here, there's a thing in solution-focused therapy where we ask our client the miracle question. And anybody can do this exercise. The miracle question basically goes, you've got all these issues, right? You're facing them, you've got them going on, and you go to bed and you go to sleep, and a miracle happens. And every single thing that you need to change has changed. But you were asleep, so you didn't know. And you wake up, and how would you first notice that things were different? And you kind of note the experience, the feelings, the visions that you're having, and you're kind of creating a list of what needs to change and shift. It's a really helpful exercise, and it's something that I suggest everybody does. You know, with me, it will often be, I'll wake up and I'll be breathing like really fresh air, and I'll hear like sounds of children in the distance, and you know, I'll feel the draft of the wind from the outside coming through, and I'll hear people chattering, and I'll know that I'm somewhere really spectacularly beautiful with nature, right? So like I can see what needs to shift and change. If I don't have that, then I can't work towards it. So look at exploring that as well. What do you think of those types that say, just think positive? How are we meant to handle these people? I love that one. I'm feeling really sad at the moment. Just think positive. I'm having a really bad time at work because my boss is bullying me. Just think positive. My partner has left me. I feel broken. Just think positive. Just like, okay. You know where they're going with it. On a really cerebral level, you know, to be honest, neural pathways are important, and we form and forge neural pathways through the way that we think. So think about your brain as let's just go really basic. Let's think of it as an engine, and you know, you're born with a new engine and it gets extra pieces, yeah, because you soup it up, and then you know, you get to my age and it starts to kind of just like get a bit rusty. You need to kind of make sure that you're really reconditioning it quite a lot. But the idea that it's set and that's it is just not true. And you can see that because people learn new skills and they do new things and they learn new talents and all of those things. But our job is to realistically really work on recognizing that whatever we think, we can rethink. So when people say just think positive, okay, it can feel trite and glib, and it can feel really annoying and disrespectful because I haven't thought of that. You didn't think I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could just think more positively? You know, I get it. That's how you think. You're angry because of course you've thought about thinking positively. It's like when people say, I feel really depressed, and somebody goes, go for a run. Like, the actual truth beneath that is true. Like, go for a run, that will help. But I feel so exhausted that I can't get out of bed, and I need to be heard, and I need to figure out how I'm going to even make it my first step out of my bed before I can even consider even thinking about one day going for a run. It's about the incremental learning and growing that gets you to that point. So what I'd say is, first of all, meet them with compassion, because to some degree, they're right. They're just skipping like 600 stages. So when you just think positive, when you think positive, when you do affirmations, when you write positive things down, when you repeat them to yourself, when you do mantras, when you exercise regularly, when you meditate, when you do all these things to think positively, you are reconditioning the way that you think. And those neural pathways improve because of that, right? It's powerful. But arguably, when people say just think positive, there's two things you can do. You can dig your heels in deep and be like, that's so obvious, please be quiet. Or you can meet it with more of a compassionate response, which is, you are absolutely right. I would love to think more positively, but right now I'm struggling and I need you to hear me out so that I can kind of work this through. And they might be able to then reach in and do that, or they might not be the right person for you. But instead of getting angry with them, which is what we feel, it's like their message is honest and authentic and true, but unfortunately you're not in that space to meet them. And it's like, I always talk about the bridge. You're on that side of the bridge, they're on that side of the bridge. And it's like, how do you meet in the middle? And it can just be as simple as, I would love to think more positively. Like, how do you do it? Actually open the question out. Because they might be like, oh my God, I have this list. Or you can say, have you ever been at a point in your life where you haven't thought positively? And usually it's yeah, because then you've got a connector. And when you have a connector, you can explore strategies and you can still disagree with them. But the point is, you can have a connector and you can build that conversation. So don't reject it. Understand where it comes from, but I also accept the fact it can be a bit annoying. I know I would be annoyed at times, but it's like, be kind, because they are trying to give you the advice that in the long term is required. Any advice on how to move on from a 5-year relationship? I was lied to from the start, kept on the outside of his life, and I was led to believe that in time he would make changes. I finally learned the truth and it hurts. I know I need to put my big girl pants on, but it's hard. There's no such thing as big girl's pants. This idea that we have to be emotionally strong when we get really badly hurt and just move on and get on with it. Like, that would make us incredibly cold. It wouldn't mean that we learn. It wouldn't mean that we were empathic. So the way you feel is genuine, authentic, and you need to respect it. I'm really sorry that you spent 5 years being lied to. The thing about con artists, and I do put them in the con artistry bracket, is they are charming. They're incredibly good at convincing you of the way that they feel and to make you feel that they really feel that way. They like having their cake and eating it. They exploit your weaknesses and they prey on your vulnerabilities and they inspire the positives about you as well. So you're kind of completely confused about what this means because they seem so perfect, and yet at the same time, they seem so broken and wrong for you when you actually explore it. So you need to start accepting that you've got a grief process to go through. You're grieving. 5 years is a long time. And don't feel stupid. I always find that there is this almost set belief system in our society that fools get conned, right? And it's just not true. In fact, we know that because the research tells us that. So whilst, there are certain demographics that obviously can be conned more easily, like if you're in your 80s and you're not very literate with technology and you believe in phone calls and people trusting you, that you trust people on the phone, obviously you're in a stronger position of getting conned. Same with love cons and all of that. But for most of the rest of us, demographic-wise, it's very possible to fall for a con man in a relationship or a con woman in a relationship because we all want to be loved. We all want to feel safe. We all want to believe what they're telling us. And that's what you have to ask yourself. Like, if somebody is telling you they love you, they're going to do something, they're going to be with you, and when you're with them, it feels good, why would you be questioning that? Like, imagine what kind of a person you'd be in life if you're going through it all the time thinking, oh my God, this person is a complete con artist. Like, I cannot trust the way that they speak to me. That's not how we operate. We all operate with trust a million times a day. You get out of bed, you turn your light socket on, you don't think you're gonna get electrocuted. Could happen, but it's not gonna happen. You go to bed, you don't fall out and die. It does happen. 6 people a year die falling out of bed. Bizarre fact, but true. Do you know what I'm saying? There are these micro trusts that we have all the time. So we're brought up in a culture of trust. Trust adults, trust parents, trust teachers, etc., etc. It's not always true, but we're told to. And like I said, all these interactions of trust, you know, you go and spend money at the supermarket, you expect to get the right change. Trust, trust, trust. So when you're being told directly by somebody, trust me, and I love you, and I'll be there for you, and it's just going to take some more time. It's incredible how long we can go on. And 5 years feels like forever, but also it's so much shorter than 20. And people do go on for 20, 30, 40 years. So you've learned a great deal. You've got wounds, lick them. Allow yourself to feel annoyed. You've been duped. But know that that's not on you. That's about him. And he was just a selfish individual who felt that he deserved to have everything that he wanted in the order that he wanted it. And it's a really good thing that that's not the case, because you deserve to be first, primary, and the most important person in another person's life. That's the deal. You know, and knowing that you can have that now comes from knowing what you have not got with him. So try to focus on that as well. Okay, guys, I'm going to get going in a second. Hope you're all right. Obviously, life at the moment is quite consuming and confusing, and I have a lot of people getting in contact with me about lots of different things and feelings and thoughts and concerns. And even though I wish I had like the answers for everything, what I do know is that there are so many good people in the world, in the UK, and all of those things, right? And when you look at our lives here, as much as they can be chaotic and confusing and scary, you know, when you look at places like Afghanistan, when you look at places where, let's say, there are bigger tragedies unfolding and bigger problems unfolding, and places where there are like massive tragedies due to the weather, you know, massive hurricanes and earthquakes, it's like perspective is really important, you know? If you tonight are safe, if you can eat, if you've got people around you who love you, then sometimes it's about just having that perspective and just settling into that sense of it's okay. You know, it doesn't mean you don't want to change things. It doesn't mean that you don't want to make and manifest lots of different things. It doesn't mean that you're entirely happy with the way things are playing out. It's just that accept that you still have fundamental things that have great meaning and that others would trade with you. And that's not me saying, oh, think about people who are poorer than you. It's like me saying, be grateful, because it's hard sometimes to be grateful when things don't feel like they're playing out how we want them to. Because we're survivalists, aren't we? Like, we're all animals. We're all surviving. It's all about us protecting our own. It's all about us getting the best way forward for ourselves and for the people that we love. That's what we're naturally inclined to do. So when something interferes with that on any level, understandably, we feel deeply uncomfortable with it. But sometimes instead of like fighting it and like feeling angry and all of that, it's more of like, okay, all that's real, that all exists, but I can also coexist with a feeling grateful for what I do have. And even if you can just sit tonight and write 3 things down that you've enjoyed today, that might just be that, like, the bite of my husband's vegan kebab before, you know, that I made. And that I remember thinking, I can't really taste it, but I think it's nice. I think it has the right base of spice and the right base of vegan mayonnaise and quite a lot of onion. So it felt good. And tonight I'm going to be grateful for the fact that I'm going to go to sleep and both my children are under my roof and they're safe. And, you know, I'm going to be thankful for you guys. So those little moments of being thankful, thinking positive. Sorry, I just had to do that. I'm not taking a mic, just because we said it before. But it makes a difference. Okay, I'll see you again soon. Take care, guys. Much love.